Hi, this is the WayOut series. It is a collection of testimonies and revelations that can help you in your own healing journey. This is an online training on renewing your mind, inner healing, based on the way that's already behind me. This is not a few-step program. It is an encouragement and tools from someone on the way out to others on the way out. I believe that what meant a turning point for me will become yours as well. Have a great way out. Hi, it's the 10th session of the WayOut series. In the previous one, I was talking about how the understanding of the gospel in the endless unconditional grace of God helped my inner healing, and how much I needed this revelation that the salvation is complete and everything is finished about it, and I'm completely free. And in this season of my burnout, this is something that I really needed to understand. And now I'm going to talk about another aspect of my burnout, which is almost as much as important as the previous session. So there was this time when I was like really ministering everywhere, at every conference. I was on the prayer team and all of that, and it was really good and exciting, and I've seen a lot of miracles and all that. But I came to this point when I felt absolutely burned out and nothing was interesting for me anymore. And in that phase, I just remembered that why am I in this life, like in this lifestyle of like spending my whole time on God's kingdom? Like, why am I in it? Like, first when I started, it was all about like God was like drawing me to himself, and that's why I wasn't able to do anything else. And at this point I felt like now I'm just operate not so effective machinery of ministry, so that I can feel good about myself that I do the kingdom's work. And I, of course, there was some performance to it, but I also believe that this is something you do if you love God. So I have this thing about ministry that, oh, that's what you do when you love God, and I do love God, so that's it. And luckily this burnout came, and I realized like, oh, that's not what I really wanted. Like, I wasn't really like trying to have a Christian career and go to the top, but I thought that if I spend all my time with God, that's what I should do, ministering as much as possible. And then I came to this like realization that I want to go back to the place when I only wanted him. Like, I only wanted to be with him. I talk about this a lot in the testimony of my life series. But there was a mental health aspect to it. Like, I just want to go back. I don't want to like do Christian career kind of things. I just want him. And it was like, okay, I need to do something radical about it. I will go back to this place of only wanting him, and I decided to quit everything, like all the prayer groups, all the ministry teams, everything, except for one, this upper room Felhas team that was like something that was very special to me, and I felt like God wanted me to be there, but I wasn't really ministering there anymore. I was just part of the team. I was one of the volunteers, but I was actually not doing anything there. So I was this passive member of one ministry team, and I was just leaving all the other things. And there's a friend of mine who has a little shack in the woods outside of Budapest, and it's without electricity or water. It's a place that I really liked at this time, and I asked him whether I could stay there for 1 or 2 months, you know, to get right with God. To like, I thought that somehow something miraculous would happen to me if I spent a few months with God. And yeah, it was miraculous, but not the way I imagined it to be. So I moved to this little shack, and I could feed the horses and the dogs and make fire in the stove, but that was all the jobs I had to do. So basically there was all the day and night available for me to do what? To do nothing. Like, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna really get to know God. Like, I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give myself to it. And then I realized that, okay, after a while I'm fed up with worship songs and I can't really pray anymore. So, here's what I have: complete silence. And in this silence, God started to reveal things to me. And not always shiny things. Like, most of the times there were just horrible thought patterns and bad memories coming to the surface. And God was like, okay, I can deal with that. I can tell you what this is, and I know the answer to those things. First I felt like, oh, I'm a miserable Christian. I don't do my healing well, that I have such terrible things inside of me. And slowly I had to learn that God is like, oh no, it's not about you being terrible. It's about me allowing you to see what's inside of you, because I want it to come to the surface, because I want to react to it, and I want to heal it, and I want to destroy the lies and all that. So it's a good thing that terrible things are in your mind and coming to the surface. So now I can absolutely enjoy it. Like, I sit in silence and awful things jump into my mind, and I'm like, okay. I have this neutrality about it. Like, I don't cling to it, but I don't fight against it. It's just like, okay, God, I can't do anything with that. You should change that. Slowly I learned the hard way that my inner healing is not my task to do. Like, it's only something He can do. And of course I can resist it and flee from it and clinging to lies. That I can absolutely delay my healing if I want to, but I can't make it happen. I can only let it happen and allow God to do what only He can do. And if I try to do my healing, it only leads to frustration and another story of disappointment, and oh, I tried it again and I still fail in it, I'm such a mess, and a bunch of condemnation comes with it. So I absolutely had to learn that I can't heal myself, not with any method. And the way I learned it is that I tried it. I tried it a lot. I've done so many useless and harmful things regarding my healing at this time. Like, I tried to really do it, like really give into it, like really concentrate and pay all my attention, and oh my gosh, it's not how this thing happens. Like, sometimes when we really strive, it helps a little bit, like at least your attention is there that God would heal you, and it's a good thing. But in the long run, you just get burned out of even of that, like trying to get healed. And you are just like, oh, leave it there, I can't do that. And God is like, oh, super, I always wanted that to happen. Like you finally realize that you can't do it, and I'm happy about it because it's only me who can do it, and I'm willing to do that. So here am I. Just don't try it anymore. And yeah, so I had to give up this task of my inner healing thing in my head. Like, I can't do that. I can't make it happen. I can't force it. Yeah. And I've done so many ridiculous and harmful things. Like there's not enough time on earth to tell you all of that. It was sometimes I made myself really miserable with those things. And I think there are two aspects to loneliness and silence. And it can be the most devastating, harmful thing in your life that really sucks you into the spiral of lies. And it can be the most healing atmosphere for you when God can work on you and convince you of who you really are. And it's a two-sided thing. And I experienced both aspects. And let me tell you, in the first few months, I experienced more of the worst aspect. And I was miserable a lot. Many times I felt like, am I in depression again? Am I heading towards depression again? Many times I felt like I'm on the edge of a cliff again, and how did I get here? Like, I wanted all of God and I sacrificed everything for it, even my ministry. And now here am I'm feeling even worse than I ever felt before. There were those times, and God was so gracious and He always rescued me. And looking back, it feels like this was the time God made me who I am right now. Like, so when these lies come to the surface, then bad memories and thinking patterns come to the surface, it's not always, you don't always see that God is working in you. You feel like, oh, there's something wrong, like I can't even see the sun shining. But God is in it, even the coming to the surface part, because He knows how to deal with it, so it's gonna be okay. But sometimes you don't see what is going on. Looking back, I can see that God wanted those things to come to the surface. He wanted to deal with it, and He has done it, and now I'm feeling very good. But at those times it was like, what is going on with me? Am I heading the wrong direction? I remember I decided to go to this little shack to like spend more time with God, and I was so excited about it. Like, this is the sacrifice I'm gonna make. I quit everything and I really give myself to the presence of God. And there's this well-known prophetess, I won't name her, and I told her that actually I would do that. I'm gonna leave everything behind and live in a remote place. And she was like, I don't think you should do that. And I was so upset. Like, I want more of God and you don't think it's a good idea? You are a prophetess or something, aren't you? And now looking back, like 4 years later or something, I see that, oh, she was partially right. Like, there was some danger in it. And God absolutely protected me. So I didn't go back in depression or suicidal thoughts completely. So he used this time the best he could for my advancement, but there was a real danger of me spiraling down in depression again because of the huge silence and emptiness in this lifestyle that I had there. So there were these two aspects to my silent time there. One of them was that in this lot of space where I couldn't make myself busy enough to prevent thinking about certain things, what most people do. Like they are always busy to like avoid things come to the surface, and I could no longer do that. So it was a good thing, but it was a bit like shocking at times. Like, this is really that's in me. I didn't know that there was such a big mass in my head. Like, I had to learn to realize those things without condemnation. Actually, there is an incredible mess in my head that is far away from what God designed me to be. And, oh, this is really how far I am from that? Oh, I didn't know that. And first it was a condemnation, like, oh, I'm such a miserable person. And after that I realized, like, okay, that's it. My thinking is that far away from from the way God designed me to be, but here I am. And let it happen, let it come to the surface, let God see it and heal it. So after a while I was like okay with this coming to the surface kind of thing. Yeah, and there were glorious times as well. So after a while I learned how to enjoy silence and how to do those things. Many of the exercises we do on this WayOut series, they have happened to me. Not in an organized way, not literally, but most of them happened in some way to me. Because there was this big silence I couldn't deal with. Like, it was a huge jump for me. Like, I loved spending time with God, like a few hours or a weekend, but a few months was a big leap for me. And at least I was like kind of making myself getting used to it, but still it was a large gap. And first I couldn't deal with that much silence. Like, what do you do then? And you either go down in a spiral of lies that come to the surface, or you learn to have a fellowship with God. And that's what happened, that after almost going down the spiral to the bottom, I realized, like, oh, this is the way of depression, I'm not gonna go there. And I started to like treat God as my husband, as my spouse, and we were just living together. Like, we had the morning hot chocolate together, and it was him I was telling my day to, like, that was going on today, and I just shared everything, and I was just chatting. And that's the time when I learned how to be not alone while being alone, all my life I felt very much alone, except for the last few years. Like I was always isolated. I was never part of a group, and it came to the surface. Like it was obvious that I was alone. Like I was literally alone, and I had to deal with that as well. And there were two choices: either I confirm this lie that, oh, I will always be alone, or realize like this is the time when I can forever get rid of this kind of thinking, and I can get to learn how to have fellowship with God. And I had encounters with Jesus, visions, all that before, but at this time it was not like I could fill my schedule with visions or great experiences. I had to learn how to just simply live with God and simply be with Him. Like I was doing just my painting and cooking and just simple things, quite boring from looking from the outside. And I developed this constant dialogue kind of thing with God. Like I had this person living with me, and I had this choice that there were two options: I go insane, or I learn to have God as my company. And first it looked like the first was happening, and then by the grace of God I could learn how to have this endless fellowship of God with me. And there were some really good experiences. So visions and times when God just started to talk about a memory or a point when I started to agree with a lie, and He brought up things. Like we had this dialogue all the time, and many times it was about like everyday things for weeks or months. And after a few weeks He brought up an issue, like a long forgotten issue, and He was like, okay, we will deal with that now. So it was a good therapy. God really knew how to reach to the depths of me. This is the year when I prophesied to myself. I never do such a thing, but I've done this at this year, and I told myself, this is the year when you will be completely isolated and completely surrounded by company, and this is the year when you will leave everything behind and you will be in the middle of it. It will feel like you are off track of your destiny, and you will be just heading to your destiny. And this is what happened, like literally. I skipped all the ministry, and that was the time when like churches started to invite me to preach, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm done with that. And they started to invite me, and like, okay, then I go every now and then. So I started to preach at places. It never happened before, or not very often. The other thing was that I wasn't that much isolated. Like I had this 1 or 2 week phases when I was completely alone, but there were times when I was taken on trips by this friend of mine who owns this farm, and he took me to families and to smaller communities. And it was crazy because I was like okay with like ministering at conferences, because it's quite impersonal, like hundreds and thousands of people, you just pray for them and they leave. And now I had to like come close to people in another sense, like greeting them, having small chit chats, opening myself up, and it was very uncomfortable. It was really dragging me out of my prison, a freer version of prison, but still prison. And it was very uncomfortable. I was very ashamed and stressed about it. I hated going on the small meetings where I was seen and known and had to tell things about myself. But it was from the Lord. Like, I was suffering at the first 100 occasions or something, but slowly but surely those boundaries started to fall down. It wasn't that quick. It was not quick at all. The other thing was that this guy who owns the farm, he's the most free person I know regarding performance to people or performance to God. Like, he's absolutely free of those things, and I've learned so much of him. Like, I could learn from a normal person how to be free of people, and how to be free of like performance to God, because I had such a small prison cell. But God was so good. He made me to like kind of live with the person who is the freest in that sense, and it was super funny. And he's very extroverted, and he annoyed me in every way. But he didn't have any of the typical Christian lies, like all this performance mentality and everything. And I was really forced to see that freedom. And every person learns the best by experience, by seeing it. And I could see this guy who just enjoys life and deals with people and loves company, and I was just the contrary, and I had to see it, and I was also dragged into it. Like, I had to be it, and it was really God just snatching me out of a prison again. It can be quite dangerous that you get rid of like one or two lies and you feel a little bit better, and you're like, okay, that's a place quite comfortable. I'm gonna make it home. Like, let's put up a tent, it's a good place. That's what happened to me. Like, I had this great experience with God when I first met him, and I got rid of a few lies, and I felt good enough to like minister and have this minister life. And this burnout was a good thing, because I could like finally realize that actually I want to get rid of all of the things that are contrary to my original nature. Yeah. So I learned so much from this guy and from his freedom, and I still do. I remember when I got there to this little shack, I was like very excited, like, oh, I'm gonna really give myself to God in this time, and I'm gonna be glowing at the end of it or something. And I asked God, like, what is going to happen to me? And I expected like certain things, and he was telling me, I'm gonna teach you freedom. And I was like, freedom is something that is taught. Like, I was into deliverance at that time and these kind of things, and freedom is not taught. And looking back, it's just so funny. That's exactly what was going on. He was setting up all the circumstances to teach me freedom and what it looks like setting this example of freedom to me, and taking me into situations that forced me to experience greater freedom. And it was really like I told God, you can have me, and he was like, okay, then I'm gonna lay you down in my operating theater and I'm gonna work on you. And that's the most you can do about your healing, letting him do it and allow him to organize all the circumstances in a way that facilitates your freedom and your healing. And he's a good therapist, and he's like awesome in that, how to set up everything for your healing. And even if you feel like, oh, it's something that will prevent my healing, it's actually the very tool he would use to push your limits and take you to a freer and wider space. So that's what I was doing, spending most of my time in silence and alone, every now and then going on these small trips with this guy or hanging out with this guy. And it was a bit like boring looking from the outside because I wasn't accomplishing anything. I was just painting and feeding horses. So it wasn't like I was saving the world from the looking from the outside. And I felt like that, oh, really nothing happens, but I'm gonna still stay. And looking back, I can see that this is the time when God changed me. Like, this is the time when God was just really writing me to be his letter. As I said in one of the exercises, like, you are his letter. And I was really like being written at this time by him, but I couldn't always perceive it. So it's like few years later I can look back and say that this was intense, but at this time I felt like nothing really happens. I don't feel like I feel better than yesterday. What I mean by this story of part of my story is that it is kind of necessary to give this space and time and attention to our healing. First of all, for me it was like giving this space to God to do whatever he wants to do, and he decided to work on me. Sometimes we had this stupid idea that we need to save the world and somehow we owe something to the world and we need to minister and we need to like do our stuff, and that's how we help people. And it's partially true, and I love loving on people, but the most you can do for others is that you allow God to work on you. There is a kind of selfishness that is according to the heart of God. And it sounds a bit like nonsense, but we perceive it to be selfish because we don't understand the whole thing. Like, oh, if I take that much time just for myself and don't do ministry and don't pay attention to this, that, and that, I'm just like selfish and I'm just thinking about myself. But actually it helps the whole world. Like it has eternal effects on the whole creation if you take time to allow God to work on you. And this is what I learned in this season. I went there to like get to know God and to spend more time with him. And what he wanted to do with me is loving on me and hanging out with me and showing me who I really was and who I really wasn't, and let all this shit, all these terrible thoughts and thinking patterns come to the surface, and he wanted to deal with them, and it was like an intense therapy. And I think God is loving and patient and gracious, so he would do it anyway. but I could have hindered it and delayed it if I wanted. So there is something about giving space to God to do things for you. Like allowing Him is something you can do. And allowing Him to do work on you can actually mean giving your time and attention to it. And this time and attention doesn't always happen automatically. Actually, when you realize like, oh, I want God to like introduce myself to me, like the real me to me. I want to know who I really am and who He really is. And when you decide that, it's like all the world conspires against you to prevent you from that. Like it is ridiculous what can happen when someone decides that. Like all the circumstances start to like work against it, like so that you can't have that time, you can't have that attention. And this is something you need to be a bit cruel about. Like there is this cruelty that is after God's heart. You need to be harsh and massive about this time. Like this is the time when God is working on me, and I respect it and I protect it from anything. Like even if the whole world collapses and there is this World War III going on, whatever, I'm gonna have my time with God when He can do with me what He wants to do. And it is first of all essential for your like fellowship with God, and that's all. But when we talk about mental health, I need to tell this part as well, that for your mental health it is essential to have God to see you and work on you and do what He wants to do, and bring up things that He feels like should be brought up and in a way they should be treated. And yeah, He knows all of that. No therapist can really oversee you and look into the depths of you, and He's just really good at giving some time of rest and enjoying life, and then bringing up an issue and deal with it, and then have a break again, and then He brings up another. So he has these dynamics to it, and He's just very kind, and yeah, He just does it in an awesome way. If you do that, if you take time to like sit in silence and allow God to work on you, my advice is that you shouldn't do it like in a huge jump. Like don't go away for a year when you haven't spent a weekend in silence, or don't try a weekend if you haven't spent 5 minutes, because this silence and loneliness things works both ways, and your mind can be really tricky and drag you down if you don't pay attention to it, or if you don't know how to pay attention to it and realize like, oh, we are heading to the wrong direction. So I don't advise you to like do a big jump. Just get used to silence. For me, even if I practiced silence before, the few months in silence was a big leap, and I couldn't deal with it, and it made me go down the spiral quite a lot. So it was tricky, and I almost got into depression again. God saved me, it was all okay, and then it became the tool to learn how to commune with God in a way I've never experienced before. So it's all okay for me, but to others I would say you should do in a space that like going into the cold water. Just first your feet, and then you go in to your waist, and so it's just, then you go under. So you can't just jump, because then your heart can stop. So you just you need to really pay attention to this inner voice, how you should do it, because yeah, it can be dangerous, and it can be the most healing thing you've ever had in your life. So it's very effective in both ways, both for healing and both for like devastation. If I could teach only one thing to people and to myself, this would be it. Like allowing time, space, and attention to God, so that He could do what He wants to do, and He could reveal who we really are, and He could just select our thoughts and select our memories and rewrite us. This is one of the most important things, I think, regarding mental health as well. Regarding your relationship with God, it's the thing. But even when we talk about exclusively on mental health, it is an essential thing. It's so great to look back and realize that the freedom I have now, like I love myself and I love my life right now, in this is possible because I had this time with God, and it was also by the grace of God, but it was something that I allowed Him to do, like take me to. Like it was, there was this pull, like, oh, this drawing, like come here, and I really felt like I'm attracted to like be in silence, even if I didn't know what to do there. And I'm so happy that I allowed this thing to happen. It really changed my life. And I know that everyone's life situation is different, and I won't tell you how much time and when and how to spend in silence and how to give more space to God to work on you. But you should find a way. Like, it can be 10 minutes, it can be half an hour, it can be one day you take off work every month. I don't know. But just in any way, find the time. And if you can't like really find it, there is no time left to that. Just take that time. Like, just really make it happen. Like, at any cost. Like, this is something that is worth doing at any cost. Like, even if people feel like you neglect them and it feels like you don't contribute to certain things that much anymore, it's okay. You love people the most when you allow God to work on you, and it is worth it. Because the way you start to treat them when you learn who you are, like at the cashier, and when people annoy you, like when you know who you really are, you can be that unconditional love to them that cannot come from any other place, but from the place of you knowing who you really are, and just, I don't need to prove anything, I can love on you. And this happens quite slowly, this transformation, if we don't allow it to happen and we don't give space to it. Actually, I think God is good enough to do it anyway, and He is in us, in everything, and He will use every type of situation to heal us. But there is something like an acceleration to it when we are just like, oh, here you have this time. I'm laying down on the operating table, and you can work on me the way you want. Yes, so that's my advice for you, that you should find the way to give space to God to write the letter of your person, to write His story on you, so that the people would see what He can do with someone, so that the people can see and experience your true nature, your original nature. And in these times, God convinces us, like, this is who you are not what you thought you are. Actually, this is a lie, that's who you are, and that's who you are. And you need to hear those things, you need to realize this, even though it's in you, and that's who you really are in the depth of your being. Somehow you need to realize it, and this realization happens in that empty space with God. I think I'm gonna do an exercise on that. We have a few minutes break. God bless you, and enjoy your time with God, and just be and become who you really are and who you are created to be. God bless you. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was a blessing for you. This course is completely free of charge. However, the production and editing has a cost, and I wanted to produce this series in the best possible quality and make it available to everyone absolutely free on YouTube. So if you feel led to, please contribute with any amount to the production costs. All the donation options and the payment methods are available in the description.